Hi guys, it's Ray. Today I am baking a loaf of bread. This is going to be a hybrid bread. It's going to be a yeasted bread, but I'm going to use some of my sourdough discard in it. I haven't fed it yet today. My sourdough starter is reaching peak slowly because it's very cold this week. So this is just what I'd consider a discard. It's going to give the bread still some of the extra flavor, but it's not going to be as flavorful as a fully fermented sourdough. And I have to discard anyways, so we're going to make a cheddar jalapeno loaf. So all I need is my starter, and because this is an artisan bread recipe that doesn't call for any kind of starter, I'm going to use 200 grams of starter, and I'm going to substitute 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour from the actual recipe as that starter to keep the correct consistency. Hopefully that makes sense. So all I have is the starter, some bread flour, a cup of warmish water for my yeast. I'm going to use rapid rise yeast and just a little bit of salt. That's it. It's going to be super simple. Then I will have shredded cheddar, and I'm going to use pickled jalapenos, not fresh, because that's the flavor I prefer. So this is a weighed recipe. So I'm going to change my scale to grams. And no, I still have not replaced this scale. This is just the cover from the starter. It's not in its actual jar. Its actual jar is getting cleaned. So here's my bowl. My bowl weighs 309. In case I lose my zero, I'm going to need to know that. So I'm going to zero again. And I'm going to put my 200 grams or so of starter in first. It's just a little bit of flour. And I'm going to move my starter back to its other jar at some point here. I just need a tiny bit more. Okay. So I'm actually at 202. I don't think you guys can see under the bowl the scale itself, but it's there, I promise. So because I'm going to substitute down, I'm going to use 350 grams of flour. I'm just going to put the whole package of yeast in. One of these days my store will actually have a big jar of yeast in stock, but not yet. So that's my yeast. It says 360 grams of water, so I'm going to go for 260 because I'm taking out 100 for that starter. And I didn't temp my water, but you want your water like 120. 260 is what I'm going for. Okay. But you want your water warm enough to activate your yeast. Even though it's an instant yeast, you still want warmer water. So I'm just going to mix this all together. I've found that adding all of the salt is fine, even though it's getting the pickled jalapenos and cheese, which have salt. But I do try and cut it to like 5 grams or 7, 8. Not quite the full 10. That was 7. Because the cheese is salty and the jalapenos are going to be salty from the pickling process. Some of your starter might not fully incorporate yet. That's fine. You can Weigh your flour in a separate bowl if you want, or you can just add it directly. I'm just going to put it all in. So it calls for 450, so I'm going to go for 350. And I'm just going to mix this until it's a relatively shaggy dough is how this one's going to start out. Okay. Something I don't think I mentioned in my starter video, because I never got the part 2 of the starter up, is don't wash your sourdough stuff down the sink. It's very sticky, almost like clay, really. It's basically the same ingredients as homemade Play-Doh. Really, this will go for any dough. Rinse your bowl in hot water and dump it outside. Especially if you like have a septic system, you're not going to want this clogging anything up. So, I am going to go put this in a little bit warmer an area in my house. I'm going to cover it, and it's going to about double in size. So, that's it for now. Okay, real quick, I'm just going to talk about the cheese that's going to go in our bread and the jalapenos. Please grate your own from block. This is just cheese. It doesn't have any other additives on it. If you buy pre-shredded cheese, it's going to have like a starch coating on it that keeps the cheese from sticking together. Yeah, anti-caking blend. This has potato starch, tapioca starch, and something. A mold inhibitor. So, this isn't going to melt the same and incorporate into your bread the same. Some people do use it. I don't recommend it because you don't want that extra starch. You want to use a grater and grate up your own cheese. I think most of the recipes call for about 8 ounces. These are 8-ounce blocks. I'm going to go a little bit bigger than that. I'm just going to cut a little bit off the end of each. My dog's going to come running for the cheese tax because he is asleep, but knows exactly what cheese sounds like. So, yeah, shred up your own. It only takes a couple seconds. I know cleaning your shredder, grater, whatever, isn't always the most fun, but I like to use a little bit of white and a little bit of orange. I better just prepare the cheese tax now because he's coming here. So, yeah, grunt at me. Different sharpnesses have a different melting point, so experiment to see what you like. Some people like to cube it up, some people like to cube it and freeze it before they bake. Do whatever works for you. I'm just going to shred this. You can see how this has none of that starchiness to it. You can just see the coating on top. I know my camera's making this look extra orange. I promise it looks like normal cheddar. Okay, so that's my cheese. I'm doing this on a paper plate because, again, in my kitchen clean out, I got rid of all my small plastic plates, which is what I would normally use also when I do this. So, for my jalapenos, I am just using these ones from Aldi's. They're the hot ones. I'm going to go drain the rest of this jar And I want about 8 ounces of these also. So, maybe not 8, maybe 6. I can't get the lid off this one. My hands are hurting today. So I'm just gonna stick a little fork tine under the side and pop it. And I'm just going to roughly chop these up a little bit. You can use fresh jalapenos in your breads. I just prefer jarred, and the fact that all these carries these big jars is convenient. I'm going to grab my dough quick. Okay, you can see my dough is starting to rise. I do want to try to do a couple sets of stretch and folds on this. This is super sticky. I'm gonna flour my hands. And I'm just gonna put a little bit of flour around the edge of my bowl. This is not necessary, this is just the way I do it. So you're gonna try and get one side of your dough, and you're gonna lift it and fold it over. This is gonna help build the structure of the dough. So I'm gonna let this sit and rest for probably another 20 to 30 minutes, and I'll come in and do another just like that. I'll probably only do 2 sets in this case, just because I'm gonna do a same day bake. But I'll see how it's looking when I do the next set. Okay, so I'm gonna do another set of stretch and folds. So I'm going to cover this back up. I'm going to give it about a half hour, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I'm going to jump in real quick before we laminate the bread. I'm going to put my starter back in its clean jar and get it fed now that I've discarded. So I'm going to zero this out on grams. My jar weighs 474. It's always good to know what your starting weight is. And I'm gonna pour off about 100 grams. I'd like to, you don't have to do this much, but I'd like to get some pretzel bites made at some point here. So. I don't know. I might get, that's too much now. It's 105, but that's fine. I may at some point get another one of these jars just because it's easier, because it's not as tall, it's wider. But I'm gonna grab my water. I use spring water because we're on a well. So I'm gonna get up to about 210. Close enough. And then I'm gonna finish off my King Arthur whole wheat flour. I don't have much left. 0 again. And then the rest I'm just gonna do regular flour, all purpose. This is actually my original bag of wheat flour, so that's all it's had since I started it, was this one bag of wheat flour. I don't always do a 1-to-1-to-1 feeding daily, and I don't always do as much. Kind of depends on how much baking I'm planning to do. So but that is it for maintaining the starter. You can go down to 25 grams of starter if you don't need it. You really only need to pay a ton of attention when you know you're going to need a certain amount for a recipe. So that is it. That is how I'm maintaining my starter. Okay, so there she is. Looks good. I'm going to flour my surface, and we are going to laminate our inclusions in. We didn't mix them into the dough. May need a bench scraper. My counter is clean. I am going to put a piece of parchment paper. I'm going to stick with the same bowl. But I'm going to put a square of parchment paper in the bottom of the bowl. That way it'll transfer to the Dutch oven easier. Just a square. Because you want these points on the parchment to lift your dough. I'm going to lightly flour my hands, and I'm going to push this out into a rectangle. It's not terribly sticky anymore. So when you're laminating, you want to do like thirds. My first couple times I get myself twisted around, and I was like putting it all on, covering the whole rectangle. That's not what you want. I'm gonna bring you up a little bit, because if you do the whole rectangle, you're folding your inclusions on themselves. It's not like a cinnamon roll. So I'd really like this a little thinner, but I don't think I'm gonna get there. But like, do your middle third. I do want my cheeses mixed a little bit. Leave a little bit of an edge. And then pull a third over. Because see, if I'd done the whole thing, I would have just flipped that right onto where I already had inclusions. And that wouldn't have worked. And I've done it. And then realized afterwards what I'd done. This is where if it did stick to your counter a little bit, you can use your scraper. And I'm going to do small thirds. I'm going to kind of press this in a little bit so it doesn't fall right back off. And I almost always tear my bread somewhere. I'm not good with the window pane thing. If it tastes good at the end of the day, I'm happy. Let's get the rest of these peppers on here. Getting a little thin there. Okay. So I'm going to try and stretch some of the excess dough around and down, just to tuck it in and seal it all. I'm going to try and shape it a little bit without blowing out all my inclusions too early. So into the parchment bowl, I'm going to let this sit covered again while I preheat my oven and my Dutch oven. In my oven, and while I clean this up quick. Okay, so this is my Dutch oven. It's a Lodge. I think this one's 6 or 7 quart, I'm not sure. But I'm going to set it in my oven. I have to do this one-handed, so I have my racks on the 2 lowest settings, and I have a small cookie sheet underneath where the Dutch oven is going to sit. That's just going to help kind of deflect some of the heat from the bottom of the Dutch oven. But I'm going to set this in here for as long as it takes my oven to come up to 450. Okay, so my oven's up to temp. Don't forget your head that your Dutch oven is hot, hot, hot. Make sure you use pot holders. So my bread, I'm going to use the corners of that parchment to lift it and set it in. And I do like to tuck my corners down a little bit, just so this paper doesn't burn so much. Top back on, and 30 minutes at 450 with the top on. Okay, so we're gonna take the top off carefully, and that's how she's looking. Okay, so here she is. I forgot to score it, so it just kind of popped wherever it felt like it. My mistake. I'm just going to pick a spot and stick my thermometer in, and we'll see how she is. That's my casserole thing ready to go in. It is literally just chicken, egg noodles, cheddar cheese, and broccoli. and just a little bit of milk mixed in there and a little bit of black pepper. So I need to get a better thermometer, but we're looking for 205 minimum. One, so it'll continue to cook a little bit now that it's out, so that's fine. I'm gonna move it over to the rack and I'll be right back. These ones do tend to get a little greasy because of the amount of cheddar. I mean, just look at it oozing out. So I do like to put a paper towel underneath my rack just to catch that, so my counter's not as greasy. But yeah, she's beautiful. If I think of it, I'll pop a picture up on the screen here of it done, but that is it, and I will see you next time.